DJ, PK, and we're joined by Mitch Harper, BYU insider for KSL Sports. Mitch, good morning. Welcome back from Big 12 Media Days.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Happy to be on with you today.
Mitch, when does BYU do it? When do they just follow in Jarrah Jones' footsteps and build their own Ford Center, their own 12,000, 10,000-seat dome? All the high school games in there, Lone Peak on Thursday, Timpview on Friday, a Saturday triple header. That's the way they do it in Texas. When does it happen?
It's a great idea. BYU, that's one thing that I've been kind of surprised with BYU is that they've never had their own, football command center similar to what Utah has. They always had that student athlete building for the practice side and football ops, but they kind of need a football operations center, and having their own indoor football facility would be probably great, because then you could add revenue. But that seems like something that would probably be on the back page for BYU, especially with facilities now in college sports. It seems like it's all about just finding as much revenue to add it to the rosters.
What's the update on Parker Kingston?
Parker Kingston, nothing's really changed. When that case got dismissed, and now he's, a free man, innocent, reached out to BYU for a comment on that, and they had no comment at all. They didn't even decline comment. They just didn't respond. So nothing's really changed on that front, with Parker Kingston. I'd be surprised if, he was at BYU playing football, but no new information on that situation. I think what makes it challenging too is that if he was to ever be back at BYU, that case could be refiled. And I know that the state has said that it would be refiled. And I remember talking to legal analysts with KSL, Greg Scortis. They believe that it was going to be refiled quickly, and it hasn't been refiled yet. But if there was a situation where he's on the team and then it gets refiled, that would be kind of a difficult situation there for BYU. So nothing's really changed on that front. And so right now he's still, no longer part of the university, no longer a student, no longer part of the football team.
He would face honor code sanctions. There had been references to Retzlaff's situation, and we know he had a suspension and chose not to take it, and goes to Tulane and plays immediately. It seems like with the threat of possible refiling, that potentially prevents him from playing for anywhere then, right?
Yeah, it would feel like that. And also, too, the ghost transfer rules now with the NCAA that basically kind of got created after the Retzlaff situation. And look, any NCAA rule could obviously get an injunction, get thrown in court, and probably get thrown out. But if a school adds someone outside the portal window, because he never entered the portal during the portal window in January, that school could face the head coach being suspended up to 6 games and get a multi-million-dollar fine from the NCAA by adding players outside of the portal window as ghost transfers. And in addition, like Kingston, who really good football player last year, that would garner headlines. And then you add in the fact that what he was facing off the field as to what would cause that. I'd be pretty surprised. And again, that refiling element is tricky. And what's difficult too for him, because again, he's an innocent man here on all of this right now, with it being dismissed. This is his 5th year. So the 5-5 potentially wouldn't apply to him, because he already used a redshirt year in 2022. And then this would be his 5th year that would then expire his eligibility. So very, very difficult situation all around.
There's been a lot of talk about what the BYU receiver group looks like now. What does it look like to you right now?
They're going to have to rely on those freshmen to come in and perform at a high level. And, the expectation is that wide receiver 1 is going to be JoJo Phillips going in. But I think that's something that could be a moving target in the season. Someone else could emerge, and maybe it's Kyler Casper, the Oregon transfer, but the wild card in this unit is the freshman, and particularly Legend Glasgow, who will probably take on that Parker Kingston role this year. And, he emerged in spring ball as someone that was already trending towards being a starter, and it wouldn't shock me at all if he's starting this season and they expect, big things from him. Even Bear Bachmeier at Big 12 Media Day noted that Legend already knows the playbook inside and out, and that's one of the reasons he was getting a lot of first-team snaps in spring ball. So Legend Glasgow, and then, I think the one that really could be interesting is Jaron Pula, the heralded freshman from Lone Peak High School, was once a UCLA commit, then he flipped to Utah, then to BYU. Kind of a long, windy road in the recruiting trail. Those two guys in particular, I think they need them to hit instantly this year, because I think that they feel good about, JoJo Phillips and Casper, but those guys to me seem more like, at best maybe a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 right now. I mean, look, last year at this time we didn't know about Kingston being potentially a wide receiver 1 type guy, maybe a byproduct of also having Chase Roberts to get a lot of attention. But Kingston emerged and became a star, but they don't have a Roberts or a Kingston anywhere close to that in this receiver unit. And it's a big question for this team. Like the talent's intriguing, but just no one's performed consistently to make you feel confident about wide receiver 1, 2, or 3 heading into fall camp in a few weeks.
You already mentioned 2 or 3 newcomers, a couple of freshmen, and then a transfer. How about some other new faces?
I think some of the new faces on this team that are going to be interesting. Paki Finau, left tackle for BYU, and he's going to anchor that left tackle spot. And the offensive line is interesting this year because they brought in a bunch of transfers from the transfer portal, and Finau will probably be the most impactful one right away. Some of the other guys, Zach Yamauchi from Stanford, he got injured in spring ball. So he's really never taken many snaps to where you kind of have a point of reference of what he can provide on this O-line. Junior Sia from Utah State was primarily an offensive tackle with the Aggies. He's going to play right guard for BYU, but he's expected to be probably a second teamer in behind Sonny Mocassini, a returning veteran. And then, BYU's got Paki Finau, who primarily played guard at Washington. He's always been an interior offensive lineman. So he's kicking out to left tackle, and they like him there. But I think going back to the freshman piece with some of the wide receivers, there's intriguing young offensive linemen that in a perfect world would allow for BYU to kick Paki Finau in at guard and then have some of these freshmen emerge at offensive tackle, say a Bot Molitalo, who was from Lone Peak, a top 100 recruit, once committed to Oregon, or even a Siosiaua Latu Finau, who was, heavily recruited by Stanford and Cal, committed to BYU in the 2025 cycle. Guys like that are really talented players that they feel could be talented players potentially. Maybe they emerge as like tackles, but Bot Molitalo is one that I'll be intrigued to see how he continues to develop in fall camp. But Finau is going to be the one that's probably the most impactful newcomer, protecting that blind side for Bear Bachmeier. But again, I think as far as his best position out along that offensive line, it's a guard, because that's what he's primarily played his whole career. They like him at left tackle, but it's a new position for him. So there's not many game snaps for him at that spot. And if you want to get the best 5 possible, which is something that, BYU's staff with A-Rod and TJ Woods have talked about, I think that would be, kind of intriguing to see if that could, kind of materialize where some of those young guys emerge and creates an opportunity for maybe to get that best 5, to get them in their true positions along that offensive line.
Overwhelmed? That was me with diabetes. Hey, I'm Jabron. Between teaching and coaching, managing diabetes felt like an extra job. With the Freestyle Libre 3 CGM, I get real-time glucose readings and have the insights to make informed decisions. My life feels lighter now. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
The views expressed should not be used for medical diagnosis or treatment as a substitute for professional medical advice. Individual circumstances may vary. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
All that time at the Star in Dallas, what did you learn about any of these other teams? And is there anybody else you came away really impressed with and thinking they could be good? Or did you come away thinking usual suspects, everybody knew what to think coming in, and we all think the same thing walking out?
I think a team that's going to be, really intriguing that, and maybe PK will appreciate this, but I think Arizona State, I wish there would have been a little bit more of an emphatic victory at the quarterback position with Cutter Boley in that quarterback battle. He's a transfer from Kentucky. But I just really trust Kenny Dillingham that Arizona State is becoming a consistent winner now. I think it kind of gets a little bit overlooked of, how, pretty competitive they were despite a lot of injuries, a lot of, different lineups last season. They still put together, I think it was an 8 or 9 win season on the heels of the playoffs. And look, they still underachieved compared to where people expected them. But, I remember years where, you go to the Rose Bowl with Plummer and then you dip to like 5 and 6 with, Bruce Snyder. And it was always kind of this erratic up and down type of deal with Arizona State. I feel like they're becoming steady. And I think, BYU's steady. Texas Tech's going to be steady with all their recruiting. And Utah's always going to be in the mix. And I think Utah's schedule sets up really well. So I just really like Arizona State. I love their portal class. A guy like Ashton Stamps, so there's some buzz on him, a cornerback from LSU. He's going to be really good for them. I even put him as a first-team All-Big 12 selection on my ballot. But I just like it. I like ASU. I like Dillingham. I think he's ASU's modern-day Frank Kush, and I think that he's going to be I think he's going to continue to win. I mean, he turned down Michigan. Kalani was a huge story last week with the Penn State stuff. I don't think the Dillingham thing with Michigan was as big of a conversation, but, he turned them down. He stays at ASU, and I think they're built to stay the long haul. So it wouldn't shock me if ASU was in the upper tier. I think another team that I'm kind of intrigued by is UCF. I think UCF, because in the old Pac-12, Alex Grinch was a punchline. But actually that defense last year when Scott Frost hired Alex Grinch, the former USC coordinator, who's now at UCF, they were actually pretty good defensively, especially in their pass defense. And I think they'll be good once again with their secondary. And now they've got a competent quarterback, the JMU transfer, Barnett, and I think they got some good running backs as well. UCF, to me, could be kind of intriguing. Maybe they get in that 7 to 8 range, which would be a huge maybe surprise, I think, compared to where people think they're probably in the bottom 4 spots in the league.
Yeah, I think that Dillingham models himself as not the modern version of Frank Kush, the modern version of Kyle Whittingham. And why I say that is because Kyle seemed to always operate best when he was underlooked or overlooked, I guess the expression would be, a little bit, maybe under-respected. And it seems to me that the Devils are kind of right there now. Phil Steele doesn't even have them in their top 45, 50, and guys that do this and really have a lot of name recognition for what their predictions are. And we'll see how it plays out. The potential is there. It could be 6 and 6, or maybe 9 and 3. We'll see somewhere in between. We'll see what happens. But I think he's kind of laying low in the weeds there, like Kyle did for so many years, and then jumps up and bites you. And I know he's talked openly about modeling his program after Kyle, so we'll see what happens. And we know for BYU, their center's Bruce Mitchell, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Can he play center on the basketball team too?
Seriously, that would be a welcomed addition just to bring some resolution to this roster. But yeah, I mean, BYU, the search continues, and I kind of got the sense it was going to go this direction this late. When I talked to Kevin Young in May at the spring meetings, he basically put it out there that they will wait till the bitter end to get guys. As late as they need to go, that could stretch in October because this market with the centers, I think that they really want to they don't want to just throw money blindly at someone who's just a 7-footer. He's only had 2 points, 3 rebounds, and because that's what's happened this cycle is that there's been a lot of overpays for guys that have really no production, but they're 7 feet, and programs are overpaying because it would seem that the Final Four schools and all the top-level teams, they've got true 7-footers more than ever now. But, obviously with the center position, BYU's missed on some guys. And even Kevin Young's noted that some of the players they've been supposedly linked to, maybe not as accurate as what's been put out there. But Kevin Young, I think they will find someone. They have to. And look, I think the last bucket to turn to will be maybe potentially the players that get an injunction with the 5 and 5, because there's going to have to be some sort of option, because they just don't have the personnel enough to feel like you're going to exceed that 6 seed kind of purgatory that they're in. I mean, BYU is good enough to be a 6 seed next year with the roster they've got. And I think the Big 12 is going to be a little bit weaker next season in basketball, at least just kind of way too early forecast on it. But it still feels like if you're going to make a second weekend run, be a top 16 seed, you've got to have some bigs. And outside of Hadim Boop and Adam Stewart, the TCU walk-on transfer who's played like 4 minutes in 2 years, they don't really have it. So it's concerning. Kevin Young, I think he embraces the possibility of creating a lineup that could be, maybe be able to overcome the shortcomings on the front court right now, but they got to add some bigs. And some of these, pursuit of potential reclassified high school guys show that they know they needed at least one center, at least one. I think they probably need 2, but yeah, I just think this is going to continue to stretch on for quite some time. I mean, we might get September and October, and they're still pursuing one till the very bitter end, because that's what really Kevin Young laid out is what they plan to do. They will wait to the bitter end, because he feels like there was no rush to have this roster finalized in the summer, because they had that last year, and it kind of fell flat by having the roster all together. So he feels like no rush to get it all finalized right now.
Wait till NBA cutdown day.
That's a great point. Hey, look, watching Summer League, I'm like, maybe there's some guy out there right now that you can bring back to the college ranks. That's how crazy it is these days.
You really think they're a 6 seed without any of the bigs that we assume they're going to add, or that we think they need to add? Because that seemed
shooting will be better.
That seemed pretty high end, even allowing for the shooting to be better, as PK says. 6 seed seemed pretty high end to me. Not that I know anything any more than anybody else, so maybe I'm just too low. But you think 6?
I think they can because Rob Wright. They project him to be the best point guard in college basketball. Look, it's got to play out. But as PK said, I think the shooting will be better. I think Colin Chandler is going to be a great fit. I'm really curious to see what Jake Wallin, the Clemson transfer, formerly of Timpview High, Utah as well. He's someone that I think they're going to – he's kind of an interesting guy where the whole player development piece with Kevin Young, what he did with Richie Saunders. I don't expect Wallin to be a Richie Saunders type jump, but – I think that's what gives the optimism for maybe BYU fans and this BYU team that they could be better than expected is because guys like him have been in this Kevin Young program and they have gotten better. Now, there are other examples from last year, case in point, where some of these role guys, they just didn't hit any shots, and it was a mess at season's end outside of AJ and Rob Wright. But I just think that there's going to be better chemistry with this team. And I think also, too, there's a lot of guys that they wanted to be at BYU beyond just simply, the paycheck or the spotlight of being around an AJ, being around a Rob Wright. They wanted to be at BYU. And, I think the guys that were retained, even like a Hadim Boop, who could be that starting 5 potentially if we're looking at it right now, they wanted to be at BYU. And Kevin Young really likes Hadim Boop, his aggressiveness on the glass. They even compared him to a Dennis Rodman type player, how he can just absorb rebounds. Kevin Young loves those NBA comps. But I just think there's a good maybe camaraderie with this team right now, and I think the shooting will be better. I think the style of play is going to be a lot more up and down, and that half-second decision-making that Kevin Young loves in those offenses, I think it's going to look a lot more like 2 years ago with spreading that ball around and making Rob Wright a focal point of this team, and then Colin Chandler, as KY notes, I mean, the flag bearer of the BYU program and being kind of the face of BYU and what it's all about. So I think they got a nice blend on the roster. And I think, again, having guys that again, want to be at BYU, I think that's important too, and kind of bringing that chemistry together and fast-tracking that for this team going forward in the next year. So I still think their schedule, we know with these advanced metrics sometimes that you get into the Big 12, if you win some home games, protect home court, which is always a good place for BYU, they'll probably be sitting in that top 30 range of predictive ratings, have a competitive non-conference schedule, get a few wins. They'll be right there in that 6 to 8 seed territory. But I think on the high end, they could be a 6 seed still again because I just think that this team's going to have better offensive firepower than last season.
Mitch, we'll leave it right there for now. We appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on and talking a little football and a little BYU hoops.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Take care.
Mitch Harper, BYU insider for KSL Sports. You can find him on social media. Find him at KSLSports.com and on YouTube as well. A lot of Cougar content out of Mitch.
Overwhelmed? That was me with diabetes. Hey, I'm Jabron. Between teaching and coaching, managing diabetes felt like an extra job. With the Freestyle Libre 3 CGM, I get real-time glucose readings and have the insights to make informed decisions. My life feels lighter now. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
The views expressed should not be used for medical diagnosis or treatment as a substitute for professional medical advice. Individual circumstances may vary. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Now with McDonald's, wake up to a $4 breakfast meal deal. Wake up to a sausage McMuffin or sausage biscuit, to hash browns, and wake up to a hot coffee. Get your $4 breakfast meal deal.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.